Great, thank you everyone, and welcome to the State Route 37 Policy Committee of Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. And thank you to all of our staff for being here, and especially to Drew Nichols for all the great work. And if with that, Drew, can you do a roll call?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, State Route 37 Policy Committee. I'll be taking roll alphabetically by county. And we'll start with the County of Napa with Mayor Leon Garcia.
Here.
Supervisor Alfredo Pedrosa, Supervisor Belia Ramos. County of Marin, don't see Supervisor Damon Connolly. Mayor Eric Lucan.
Here.
County of Solano, Mayor Robert McConnell.
Here.
Vice Chair Aaron Hannigan.
Here.
County of Sonoma, I don't see Councilmember Fleming. And then Chair Rabbit.
Here.
And then I will also recognize the Executive Director from Solano Transportation Authority, Daryl Halls.
Here.
Transportation Authority of Marin, Executive Director Ann Richmond.
Here.
Napa Valley Transportation Authority, Executive Director Kate Miller.
Here.
Sonoma County Transportation Authority, Executive Director Suzanne Smith.
Here.
Caltrans District 4 Director Dina El Twanzi.
Here.
And then Rebecca Long from MTC.
Here.
Great, and thank you everyone for being here and welcome. So without a quorum of committee members, won't be taking any actions today. We'll come back and revisit that. The only actions that we were to take were the approval of minutes, so we should be fine. With that, the first item on the agenda, second item actually, is the opportunities for public comment. And we'll open it up and see if there's anyone who would like to speak to this body. And Drew, if you can help me identify those and report out any other correspondence we received as well.
Most certainly. I did receive one pre-submitted public comment from Ed Schultze. I did provide the comment to the policy committee as well as posted on the SCTA website under the State Route 37 Policy Committee meeting. And with that, I see one hand up from Steve Bertelbaugh. Steve, I permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit and members. Steve Bertelbaugh with the Transportation and Land Use Coalition. I'm glad to see the report that SMART has done on the agenda, and I hope everybody has had a chance to digest it. I think the extent to which we can shift people from their automobiles to transit is a key to the success of this whole process. And the fact that trains are able to travel at much greater speeds than cars, I think is going to be an attraction. I like the idea of direct service to Vallejo, and hope that can be part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Chair Rabbit, I do not see any other members of the public who wish to speak on items not on the agenda.
Great, thank you very much. Again, we'll skip the consent calendar because of our lack of quorum, and we'll move on to the discussion informational items. First one up there is 4.1, which is public engagement, the SR37 communications team. And we have Bart Nye from Caltrans to give us an update. Bart?
Right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can.
Fantastic. Drew, if it's all right with you, I had to update one of the slides in my presentation, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen. And I'll just give a quick briefing on what our team is doing to work together to outreach to the public concerning State Route 37. So let's go ahead and share. All right, can everyone see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, so we have all of the partner agencies that are working on State Route 37 have come together to create an integrated approach towards our public outreach and done some branding along that line. So that's very easy for the public and our stakeholder partners to understand that when we're communicating, this is all of us communicating together. So the tagline, one corridor, one team, many solutions is what we're using in presenting information. You'll see illustrations that are similar to this. And we have members from MTC, TAM, SCTA, MBTA, STA, and Caltrans in regular attendance working on what our outreach is. Beyond that, though, some of the local cities, like the city of Vallejo, have also been participating in our meetings so that we all stay up to date on what's going on with public outreach. Now, the reason why is the public originally started outreaching to us, letting us know their feelings about State Route 37. So what we did is it brought some order to what our agencies are doing together and created this integrated team that meets weekly. Our primary communications platforms are websites and social media. We've also been doing public meetings, not only around the outreach for the planning efforts that we have going on right now and the ultimate projects that we're going to be doing, but also town halls and local cities and groups that are interested in State Route 37 and want to know what's going on. We facilitated really only one tour so far in the last 2 years, but the team looks at how we will facilitate future tours, and there's been some interest in touring. So we're working together on that. And we created a visualization subcommittee to help create some tools to let our audiences better understand what we're doing with State Route 37 and what some of the challenges are. The team meets weekly, Wednesdays at 11. You're all invited if you want to see how the sausage is made. We have representatives, like I said, from all of the other agencies. At these meetings, our Caltrans PM, our PIOs, and our legislative staff report out on what's going on the route right now. Now, not just the outreach that we're doing, but the maintenance things that potentially could be going on the route and the construction operations that are happening not only on State Route 37, but also on 101, on 80, on 121, on the other routes that are close by and freeways that are close by in the region. So that everybody's kind of brought up to speed on what's going on the route kind of weekly, so there's transparency on what we're doing. We work together on our communication strategy for public outreach. A lot of the presentations that we've had to do are been tailor-made to their audiences because there's so much, as you all know, there's so much information on State Route 37. We only have so much time to talk about it. We tailor make these presentations so that the folks in Vallejo get the information they're looking for, as opposed to the folks in Marin wanting different type of information. So we work together on that. We also cover all of the different potential topics that are coming up. We work with our subcommittee and we do a round robin. 2 examples of our working together are the video that we use regularly for our outreach meetings that was fantastically done by Mark Jones over at MTC, but all of our agencies had an opportunity to review and work on that, and it really helps us get the message out of what it is exactly that we're dealing with on State Route 37. And for a couple of our outreaches, we were able to get some advertising out in the field. That's been a direct result of us working together to get public input back on some of the surveys that we need for the outreach that we're doing. Websites and social media, just very quickly, the Caltrans website and the website that SCTA sponsors, Resilient 37, are our 2 primary websites. The Caltrans website's got all of the basic information on our projects and our environmental info, and we're doing a virtual tour there so people can kind of take a look at the site. We're in the process of revitalizing the site to make it more intuitive. And the Resilient 37 site is one that we use for our outreach. And occasionally there'll be items that we can't put directly on the Caltrans website that it's great to have Drew, I'm gonna call him out, help get our information out there so that people know what we're working on. Social media is by design. I won't waste your time with that, but Facebook and Twitter are the primary platforms that we're using with social media. As far as public meetings go, that outreach, the Pell, our draft environmental documents, the town halls that have come up, even this policy committee, are some of the things that we work on developing our messaging so that we're consistent with what we're saying. Some of the things that we've successfully done is improved our tools. The video, again, is an example of that. The advertising, we coordinated our contact list, increased attendance. And so for the Pell, we initially had around 60 to 70 attendees. Now we're over 300 for the last Pell meeting we had. So we've seen some success there. Now, many of you have probably seen this document. This is basically how we track what our public engagement is. We've got an alignment matrix that basically goes over all of the potential outreach that we have to do, who the PM is in charge of it, who the outreach coordinator or PIO is that's responsible for it, and then sort of the calendar of things that have to happen. So if you look out at June, we have this meeting happening right now. We've got the DED coming up and some other things later on in the month. So this is how we're tracking outreach. As far as tours, I mentioned we've done only one tour so far, but there has been some legislative staff interest in coming out. So we're coordinating with staffs that want to take a look at it. And together, the agencies are providing the assets needed to tour the site for whenever the next one comes up. And then finally, just a quick look at some of the innovative visualizations that we're working on. We have virtual tours that are available on our website, as I mentioned before. We've been doing visualizations, some of the data that's out there, sort of on sea level rise, and even some of the alignments that we're choosing from look better when they get sort of a 3D treatment. So we've been using some of the latest tools to help people understand what the potential impacts are. So with that, that is what your integrated communications team is doing on Wednesdays, and you're all invited to attend if you would like to. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Bart. I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any questions, comments, concerns to address to Bart on that presentation. I do see a hand up from committee member Garcia. Go ahead, please.
Yes, that information for public wants to participate is available on the webpage for the meetings.
Absolutely, as is a list of the upcoming meetings.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'll pass it along.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I do, Chair. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Bart. How you doing,
Hey,
cousin?
Hey, Cuz.
I appreciate the update and the work that's being done, particularly around, informing the community as to the conversation and what the plans are. I am kind of curious about this idea that, you tailor information. I think that's really important, but I also think it's important, and I'm sure you probably do this as well. I just want a confirmation that you share all of the project with each of the areas that you present in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also why we have a repository of information that's available to the public on the website. Probably the biggest challenge we see in communication on State Route 37 is just the complexity, the sheer amount of information. And that's why we have to tailor it a little bit to the audience.
So by chance, do you have a process where people can sign up for any updates that are placed on the website so they can receive, and they can get a newsletter or a quick email that says, hey, by the way, we just added a document?
Yeah, we have an email list, and we're in the process of upgrading the Caltrans website right now that can potentially feature that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great one. So folks can sign up, and those who are very interested can then be notified when there are changes to the website. So anyway, just my suggestion. Thank you, Bart. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Not seeing any other hands raised. Again, Bart, thank you so much for the work. Appreciate that. Thank you for the good questions from my colleagues. And with that, we'll move on. 4.2, tolling legislation. We have with us Rebecca Long, the Director of Legislation and Public Affairs from MTC. Rebecca, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Rabbit and policymakers. Rebecca Long, MTC. Just a quick update here on SB 1050. So the bill did pass the Senate by a vote of 34-1. So that was great. It passed on a bipartisan basis, and we're excited about that. It has been amended at the request of Senator Dodd to remove the appropriation provision in the bill, which was basically requiring that it be subject to a 2/3 vote. I think there was some concern that the vote, wouldn't be such a landslide to get out of the Senate. So that was the reason for that change. And what that means is that as structured right now, the authority would be there, but there wouldn't be an ability to spend the funds, which is an issue. And so the plan right now is to have a subsequent trailer bill that would make the appropriation, that would basically be enacted subsequent to SB 1050. So as you probably all are aware, oftentimes the legislature will adopt trailer bills later in the session, in the July or August timeframe. So that is the current plan. If that's not looking viable, given the, no problem getting 2/3 vote in the Senate, maybe we'll go back and add the appropriation to the bill. So, as you know, the legislative process is quite fluid, but I think Senator Dodd is feeling, pretty confident about the bill at this time. The other amendment that was made was to specify more details as to how the low income discount would work. And so it adds specific provisions as to how the authority would verify that someone could qualify. And it also makes clear that the option would be available to low income drivers who reside, anywhere, as long as they're a fast track customer. So they wouldn't be limited to just the 4 North Bay counties. So those are the key changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. I'll look to my colleagues. Not seeing any hands raised. Appreciate the update, really do appreciate the work from Senator Dodd. And as we go forward, just say thank you for staying on top of this issue and monitoring it as we go. With that, we'll move on then to 4.3, which is the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, the interim project. And Kevin Chen from MTC is here to give us an update. Kevin?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Chen with MTC. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can I get a confirmation that my screen sharing is coming through?
Confirmed.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm here to provide an update on the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. Here you go. So just a quick reminder, this project is in the middle stretch of this corridor between 121 on the west side and Mare Island on the east side. It's about 10 miles. And the proposed project is really to address the congestion that happens out there. With this project, we are implementing an HOV lane, which would really make transit viable. And also it would really help us promote the use of carpooling and other ride sharing on this corridor. The project cost, it varies depending on the alternative, but the total cost is up to about $430 million. And part of this cost actually includes some funds for us to implement transit service, bus transit that is, as well as providing some public access improvements on this corridor. In terms of where we are on this project, I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. We've completed the draft environmental document. We've circulated it to the public for comments. We received quite a bit of comments from the public, from individuals, organizations, as well as regulatory agencies. So we are in the process of reviewing and compiling all the comments, providing responses to those comments as we work towards the final environmental document, which as of now is scheduled to complete later this fall by about September or so. So when we release the final environmental document, that's also when we will also include the responses to public comments. So that's coming up later this fall. So a lot of work is happening in the background as we prepare the final document. And after that, the project can proceed into final design later this year and then through 2024. And then we can go ahead with the contract award afterwards. And construction is currently scheduled for year 2025 and 26. Here is just a high-level summary of the public comments we've received. This is not meant to be inclusive of all the comments that we receive. Again, we've received a lot of valuable comments from the public, but just to highlight a few key ones. Public transit, bus transit service was brought up quite a number of times. And we've also heard it multiple times in this policy committee meetings, as well as in the public meeting that we held for the project. Our partner at the STA is actually currently working with Caltrans to develop a bus implementation plan for this corridor. So that's in the works, and I believe there might be a future presentation on this topic later. So again, with the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, we are including some funds to implement this transit service when the project opens. The second item is public access improvements. So there's a lot of great desire to provide improvements in this area. And two particular locations I'd like to mention is on the west end nearby the Sears Point. there's a lot of interest to complete the Bay Trail Gap. That's just east of the 121 interchange, providing a connection across the Tole Creek Bridge. I think by closing that gap, it would really connect many miles of trails available in that area. So there's a lot of interest to close that gap. We also understand that on the eastern side of the project limit, on the Vallejo side, there's a lot of interest in terms of investing in some water trail projects, as well as the education center in Vallejo. So that's also being considered as part of the project. We've also heard a lot of interest to lengthen the existing Tole Creek Bridge. The reason for that is that the existing bridge is very narrow, meaning also the channel that's available for hydrological connectivity is also very narrow. We know that there's, with the Sonoma Bayland strategies, there's a great interest to provide planned restorations on the north side of the corridor. So a replacement or a lengthening of the Tole Creek Bridge can really enable that planned restoration effort. So the project team is currently pursuing this work as part of the project, and we will incorporate this as the project moves forward into the design and permitting phase. So that's something that that we will continue to pursue. Impacts to resources is definitely something that we value a lot in terms of the rich environmental resources that's available in this project area. So we are doing everything we can to minimize environmental impacts. Safety considerations was brought up a number of times. This is important, as you know, we have vehicles, that breaks down. We want to make sure that there's space for vehicles to pull over to the side safely. And the other important aspect of safety is for emergency vehicle access. So we want to make sure that there's adequate space for fire trucks or ambulance and CHP to get by traffic congestion to get to incident scenes as quickly as possible. There are also a few questions on the VMT analysis. And one thing I'd like to clarify is that the VMT analysis conducted is not just focused on the 37 corridor itself, because in order to capture the VMT most accurately, we need to capture the entire trip length from point A to point B, where people travel from home to work, and how this proposed project may affect the way people travel, whether they take Highway 37 or other routes. So the VMT analysis is really looking at the regional scale. There's also a few other questions as it relates to the sea level rise and flooding considerations. So the interim project is not intended to address the long-term sea level rise needs. Again, it's just an interim project addressing the immediate traffic congestion. We are doing some improvements to bolster up the current highway and making it more resilient to near-term flooding issues. As we know, part of the highway does settle over time. So part of it is to bolster the current pavement to prevent that from sinking further. So all in all, we have received a lot of great public comments that we are taking into account as we work on the final environmental document. So with this interim project between the Sears Point and Mare Island, we are delivering a few key benefits to the communities. So there's mainly equity, sustainability, and funding. On equity, I think there's already a significant equity challenge as it exists out there. As folks are living in more affordable homes on the eastern side of the corridor, such as Vallejo or other parts, and then commuting the 37 corridor for jobs over in Marin and Sonoma, there's really not a great alternate choice in terms of other routes. There's also no transit available. So this project is really intended to address equity by improving travel times and improving reliability for commuters. And again, we are implementing transit service, so we are providing more modal choices for commuters. Tolling is being proposed as part of the project, subject to legislative approval. So it's good to hear from Rebecca that that's making good progress on the tolling legislation approval. Means-based discount is being proposed, as Rebecca had mentioned, for tolling for those that qualify, as well as for transit service. So these are the areas that we are addressing in terms of improving equity on this corridor. In terms of sustainability, as part of the project, as I mentioned earlier, part of the corridor, especially between the Tolly Creek Bridge and the Sonoma Creek Bridge, does settle over time. So it does sink several inches every year. With the project, we are bolstering up the pavement to confine it from further sinking. So at least we are making it more resilient, at least in the interim conditions to against near-term flooding risks. With the proposed tolling, it can really help us more effectively manage traffic demand on this corridor and encourage the use of transit and carpooling. And then all of these would lead to reduced VMT on this corridor, which is a broader goal that the region and the state is working to achieve. So that supports the VMT reduction goal. And then with Baylands restoration, I just mentioned the Tolly Creek Bridge replacement. So it's something that the team will pursue as we move into the next phase of the project. And then last but not least, funding. So with tolling, we would be able to generate much needed funding to help deliver the interim project between Sears Point and Mare Island, as well as the ultimate improvement project. The funding is going to serve as a direct contribution towards the project, as well as a necessary local matching funds as we compete for other federal and state funds. So it's very important to have a reliable local matching funds for us to access in order to help us secure those funds. This slide shows really the benefits of the interim project. So as I mentioned, with this project, it's going to substantially reduce congestion on this corridor. These are projected travel times for the opening year. So in the eastbound direction in the afternoon, without the project, we're looking at about 100 minutes. With the project, we are cutting it down to about 26 minutes. In the westbound direction in the morning, we are reducing the travel time from 60 minutes down to about 30 minutes or so. So the reduction in travel time, when you add up all these reduction that happens, for many hours throughout the day, both morning and afternoon, and then you aggregate it up for each commuter, there's a value of time that people have to sit through traffic for that congestion. And you can monetize it based on the value of time. And it works up to about 85 million annually of lost value for our commuters, basically. And then when you aggregate it up to just over the course of 5 years, that delay translates to about $570 million. So when we think that we are putting a pretty substantial amount of investment on this interim project, again, I mentioned is in the $430 million range, the user benefits just over the course of 5 years would outweigh the cost that we're putting in on this investment. So again, just to emphasize that the user benefit really outweigh the project costs. We've done a high-level analysis of the potential toll revenues. So with the interim project and with the past, subject to the final approval of the tolling legislation, we can initiate tolling in 2026 when the interim project is open. And between 2026 and about 2040, when the ultimate project is expected to be constructed, just over the course of this 14 years or so, we would anticipate to generate about $657 million. So that's a lot of toll revenue that we can generate that can go towards the interim project as well as the ultimate project. Again, that just kind of emphasizes the importance of delivering this this interim project in as quickly as we can so that we can start initiating tolling on this corridor, generating the necessary revenue to pay for this project as well as the ultimate project. Again, as I mentioned, this toll revenue is not only important to go towards the project, but it's also important to help us secure potentially billions of dollars in competitive grants that can go towards the ultimate project. So that is my last slide. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. I see that Daryl Halls has his hand raised, and I'll go to Daryl first and then to committee member Lucan.
Thank you, Chairman Rabbit. Well, first of all, I wanted to compliment Kevin and his team for getting the environmental moving forward and within 3 or 4 months from being wrapped up for the interim project. So it's kind of a high five to Kevin, and you've been consistently working on this project for a number of months. Could we go back to the slide, Kevin? We had the schedule, because I just wanted to point out one fact. We're going to stay on schedule for the policy group, and I've been working with Suzanne and James and Rebecca and everybody to get funding for the project. But the environmental is a big milestone. The next step is design. And Kevin, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have design funds right now because the Arm 3 lawsuits tied up our money. So we made a request, but if we don't get about $20 million, we can't keep the schedule. Is that correct?
That is correct. We only have a small amount, I think up to about 3 million or so available from SB 170. We still need to go through a process to get access to the funds. That's from the state earmarks. But yeah, it's still very far from getting fully funded for the final design.
So that's going to be an important effort for all of our policy folks and legislative folks. I know Senator Dodgeman carrying the tolling legislation, which is good to hear it's moving forward. So I just want everyone to be aware that's kind of a near-term goal, is to get design money so MPC can proceed forward in design. We don't lose any time. Kevin mentioned about the express bus, and if you recall, NVTA did a study a few years ago looking at the potential. We've picked up that study through a consultant study that we're doing. So actually this afternoon we have a meeting with the Marin folks that we've coordinated with Ann. It includes Marin Transit, Golden Gate, Smart, et cetera. We're going to talk about the concept on the Marin side, because we've got a good plan on the Solano side. And your next meeting will be ready to present at least the concept of what express bus would look like, how much it would cost, what it would need to put it together. So, and that's really important. And Dina knows that Caltrans wants to make sure this can be a multimodal corridor. It can't just be highway expansion. It's got to include multimodalism. And so that's what we're trying to provide with the express bus service. I think Eddie's going to talk later about rail. So just FYI, thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. Go ahead, committee member Lucan.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciated the recap of the public comments received so far. I think you captured a lot of everything that I've heard and been formally submitted. The one that I do continue to hear a little bit is just, how interim or temporary in nature is really the interim project. And I don't know if we have a clear answer for that yet, whether, what is the lifespan of this? Is it really up to 2040 when maybe the ultimate project were to go into place? And then, if that is the case, then what happens to the interim project, and whether or not there's funding to do, removal or however it would correspond to the ultimate project. So just wanted to share that, because that's something I continue to hear, and you spoke to it in the comments that you received, but how do we communicate that out? Really, what is the lifespan of this interim project? So that's what I've been hearing from some folks in the community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any of my other colleagues? And I will go to public comment. And public comment, we were going to combine all the informational items and take public comment then. Before we do, I just say on the interim project piece for me is, have we ever had an interim project of this size that didn't have pieces that needed to be cobbled together? Because it'd be great not to do an interim project, but I doubt if we're going to get a check for $4 or $5 billion to make that happen anytime soon. So I think that this group got together to solve the problem as quickly as possible, and that's what we're trying to do. So I do appreciate that, and if there's another alternative out there, by all means, unfortunately it has to come with a check. or else we have an interim project in front of us to at least relieve and improve the quality of life of those that are putting up with the congestion that they are now. With that, I'll turn to the attendees list, and I see 5 hands raised, and I'll ask Drew if you can help me get through public comment.
Most certainly, Chair Rabbit. All right, where'd that list go?
And Drew, if I can
Yeah.
say, this could also include any public comment on the public engagement 4.1, 4.2, the tolling legislation as well.
Absolutely. So we have about 5 members of the public with their hands up right now, and I'll take them in order received. We will start with Steve Bertelbaugh. Steve, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the actual delay that's current. The couple of times that I've been able to go online and look at it, it hasn't seemed to be as great as it was before the pandemic. What is the process for counting traffic through here right now?
All right.
Thanks, Steve. We'll get that to you after we come back.
All right. Next in line, we have a Joe Greenheffern. Joe, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm in Solano County here with Sierra Club. You know, in an ideal world, the Pell would have our answer of where the ultimate project is going before we needed the interims, but I understand the needs and benefits of moving ahead. However, I think it would be helpful if the final DEIR identifies how the different pieces of the interim project are utilized depending on where the final alignment is selected. In other words, which pieces can be repurposed or utilized in the ultimate, or which ones have to be abandoned or removed. For example, the Tole Creek Bridge changes in some of these. So anyway, I'm hoping the DER at least points where parts of the interim project are used if we stay on the same alignment or if we go to a new alignment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next in line, we have Ariana Rickard. Ariana, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself. Ariana?
Yeah, sorry. Can you
Okay, there
hear?
you go.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, yeah, thanks. So I'm Ariana Rickard with Sonoma Land Trust, and I just want to express our appreciation for the adjustment made for the lengthening of the Tole Creek Bridge as part of the Segment B interim project. And as Ricky mentioned, that failure to lengthen this bridge as part of the project will prevent restoration of the Tole Creek baylands. So just wanted to emphasize why it's so important. This is a vital area of marsh, dike baylands, transition zone, and connections to adjacent wildlands. And if we don't lengthen the bridge, then we're not going to be able to implement our full Sonoma Creek bayland strategy. So since the current draft of the ER does not include this lengthening, we're so grateful that that we are moving forward, and it is going to be part of the permitting and the next phase. And again, with the timing of this, we really can't wait. The wetland restoration has to start immediately to ensure habitat resilience to sea level rise, as tidal marshes that are established by 2030 are more likely to flourish and provide ongoing benefits when sea level rise accelerates in the middle of the century. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana. Next in line we have is Kate Powers. Kate, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you for this. Oops, there we go. Thank you for the opportunity. Kate Powers, I'm from Marine Conservation League. We continue to advocate that the interim project support and analyze how investment in the interim project would build progressively towards long-term resiliency and a long-term project. The Pell process, which we've been participating in, is now down to 5 alignments that they're considering, and 2 of those are along the current corridor. And we feel that the causeway should be invested in going forward, both in the interim project and in the ultimate project. If you look at the timelines, 2040, the roadway is likely going to be underwater, and the Pell process is supposed to be completed by the end of this year, which aligns with when the final EIR for the interim project. It just seems that the best investment of both state and federal funds for this project would be best invested if both projects could be aligned and the ultimate project could be the interim project goals could be and design could be folded in with the ultimate project alignments that are currently being considered when analyzed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kate. Next in line, we have David Oster. David, I permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
There we are. I hear you now, David.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the agency, I just have a comment really on the funding that was described for the project. And that is whether the MTC and the others are considering tax exempt financing, tax exempt bonds for the improvements. And this can be secured by the future toll revenue. So from a cash flow point of view, instead of waiting for the money to build up to do the project, several hundred million can be raised by bonds, as I say, secured by the toll revenue. Now, I know this was done, or future toll revenue, this was done in Southern California, and it's not necessarily a common financing, but it's something that could be done and should be considered. So that's really it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. Chair Rabbit, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item or the other pre-items. Oh. Yeah, see, Ed Schultz put his hand up. Give me 1 second. My apologies on that. All right, Ed, I permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Great. Kevin, you got the lion's tiger by the tail of that section of 37. Great job so far. A lot of comments that I hear, which are really supportive of that project. But my thing is that there was 4 alternatives that we sent out, Yolanda sent out for a comment last year. Is that what the ones you're considering right now? One of the 4 comments? Okay. Yeah, it's just I want to make sure that we're all on the same path on this, because there was a lot of input on that one that we sent to Yolanda. But hey, it's great, Kevin. It's a rough job you've got, but it has to be done. Appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Chair Rabbit, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak. And that will conclude public comment on this.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Drew, for the help there. I did promise Steve Bertlbaugh that we would address I'll look to any staff member if there's any current traffic information that talks about delay. I know that we had those numbers, and I'm not sure if they predated COVID or what we'd expect on the traffic count. Can anyone help us out to get that information out?
Yeah, this is Kevin. So I haven't put any recent numbers per se right before this meeting, but I do want to mention that we do have access to INRIX data. So that's travel time data available for us to get access to that. It's big database. So for GPS devices that are part of the vehicle or cell phones, for those that travel along this corridor, those gets tracked. So that data is available for us to get access to, so that we can monitor how the travel times has changed. In terms of traffic counts, there's also a PEMS data that Caltrans maintain that also can provide us a good sense of where exactly the counts are. Even though I haven't done a very recent look at the data, but we have looked at it several months ago, and even though we are not quite at the pre-pandemic level, but we are pretty close in terms of the level of traffic congestion as well as the traffic counts.
Yeah, and I will say that I've heard from residents who are still sitting in traffic and having pretty lengthy delays. Daryl, do you have something to add?
Just anecdotal, I happened to have a breakfast meeting in Vallejo this morning, and I witnessed the backup at Mare Island. It's back to pre-pandemic levels. So it was pretty much stopped. It reminded me of about 3 years ago. So anecdotally, it's definitely the traffic's there.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And again, Kevin, thank you for the work. Appreciate that. We'll move on now to 4.4, which is Caltrans, the SHOPP projects. And we have Ricky Gao from Caltrans to make this presentation. Ricky.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit, and good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. My name is Ricky Gao. I'm the regional project manager from Caltrans for State Route 37 and the Napa. So I'm going to share my screen. Can I get a confirmation that you can see my screen?
We can.
Okay, thank you. So this is the Caltrans SHOPP project update. Currently, there are 6 active SHOPP projects on State Route 37. I think this slide has been showing before. I just want to give a quick update where we are. We have the flood reduction project, and which I will go in a little in depth in a few seconds. Also, we have the Petaluma River Bridge preservation. This project is in the environmental phase, and the draft environmental document will be released this month. Also, there's marine portion of the pavement rehabilitation project. This project is also in the environmental phase. It's a lower level environmental document which has released in April. And also we have the 2 intersection improvement project at SR37 and 121 intersection. These 2 projects has been combined into one, and the environmental document will be released in the fall. And lastly, we have the pedestrian safety enhancement project in Solano County at Wilson Avenue and Fairgrounds Drive. This is a categorical exemption for the environmental document. So that project is also in the environmental phase. And that's the overview of the smaller SHOPP projects. And then I'm going to talk about the flood reduction project. This project has been, the draft environmental document has been still in the process. Last year in November, the project team held a scoping meeting with the public, and many great comments were received. With these comments, and the project development team has decided, proposed to reduce the project limit back to the original programmed limit, which is in Marin County from US 101 to Atherton Avenue. And this proposal has been supported by 4 North Bay transportation authorities as well as MTC, and so that we can focus on addressing the most vulnerable sections of the 37 that is subject to flooding until a long-term project can be constructed in the mid-century. So with that, the project alternatives has also been revised. Most of the first 2 alternatives has been shared at the last policy committee meeting in March. And the minimum is as a phased improvement, which is to replace the Novato Creek Bridge. And this is when we cannot, if we cannot get any funding, this will be the first phase. And then we have the second alternative, which is to replace the Novato Creek Bridge and also combine it with a passive flood barrier from Atherton Avenue to, from US 101 to Atherton Avenue. And the third alternative, which is revised, and this is to replace the Novato Creek Bridge, and also with a combination of causeway and embankment from 101 to Atherton Avenue. And lastly, the maximum improvement, which is the interim causeway to projected mid-century sea level rise elevation from 101 to Atherton Avenue. And this, the last 2 alternatives has been revised or added. This is the brand new information, and to show the public that we have heard your comments from last policy committee meeting, and we want to adopt this comments and incorporate it to form a new alternative. And the considered but rejected alternatives, including the ultimate causeway, which is to the 2100 sea level rise, and will defer this ultimate causeway to the ultimate project after the PEL planning and environmental document linkage study has completed, and defer it to the ultimate project. Also, raise 37 on the embankment. This alternative has been considered with overwhelming comments from the public and the resource agencies to oppose the embankment. These alternatives has been rejected, and the strength and levy we have discussed it in the last policy committee meeting. It's outside of the state right of way, and the scope is unclear with a lot of risks. So this alternatives has also been considered and rejected. So that's the current project alternatives moving into the draft environmental document. For the schedule, as I mentioned earlier, the scoping meeting was held in November of last year. Currently, the project team is studying the alternatives and the final further develop the newly proposed alternatives. The draft environmental document will be circulated in fall of this year and could be deferred to winter of this year due to the complexity of the few new alternatives. And then we'll try to finalize the environmental document and complete the environmental phase in 2023 and go to design in 26 and the begin construction in 27. So that's update for Caltrans SHOPP projects. So ready to take comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Ricky. I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any questions, comments, or concerns. Committee member Lucan.
Just an appreciation for the responsiveness from Caltrans on this in responding to the feedback from the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Drew, I do see a hand raised on the public side. Could we take public comment on this item?
All right, where'd that list go? Participant. All right, we have Steve Berlbaugh first in line. Steve, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you. My question relates to the interim causeway to projected 2050 sea level rise elevation. Has it been considered that that interim causeway would be to the ultimate sea level rise, and why would it cost much more to build to the ultimate rise?
Thank you, Steve. Next in line, I see Barbara Saltzman. Barbara, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thanks. I'm Barbara Saltzman with Marine Audubon Society. I too wanted to commend Caltrans for rejecting the embankment alternative. And I also had a question about the interim causeway versus ultimate. Can you give us a little bit more information about how the interim one differs, or how you see it differing from the ultimate one? I'm sure there are lesser construction aspects of it, but it would be helpful to know a little bit more about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Chair Rabbit, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
Great, I'll bring it back. And Ricky, I'm not sure if you have that information, if you heard those two questions, if you can address those, please, just on the interim
Sure.
causeway cost as compared to the ultimate.
Sure, and thank you, Chair Rabbit, and thank you for the questions. So the interim causeway is to the 2050 sea level rise elevation. It's much lower than the 2100 sea level rise elevation. The reason why we are not propose ultimate causeway for this project is that we don't want to circumventing the PEL process. The PEL is still deciding which alignment for the ultimate project. And once that process is complete, we can decide and we will know whether the ultimate alignment will be on the existing corridor or a different alignment. Before that, that's why we can only propose an interim causeway to address the sea level rise of 2050. However, if the PEL do choose the alignment on the existing corridor, the project team still have the chance to pivot to different elevation if there's funding, or in the future we have the opportunity to raise the causeway if that's the ultimate alternative to be selected by the interim project.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just, as an architect and as someone interested in this, is it possible to build an interim causeway project that could actually be lifted in place? And I'm sorry.
We are still looking into the possibilities. We have not made the decision yet.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anyone have any final questions, comments, concerns? And again, thanking Ricky for his work. And we'll move on then to our 4.5, Pell, the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. And we have Chris Caputo from Caltrans. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. And good morning, committee members. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in and share my screen here. And I'm assuming that you can see this.
We see that it's shared.
Great.
There we go. All clear now.
Great. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Chris Caputo, and I'm one of the Caltrans co-leads for the State Route 37 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. Today's presentation is a review of the recent progress on the State Route 37 Planning and Environmental Linkages Pell Study. Today's update is focused on the level 1 screening analysis of the preliminary alignments that have been developed for the Pell. Before we get to that, I'd like to give you a brief overview of where we are currently and where we expect to be in the coming months. You can see on the schedule here, since we last met in March, we've finalized our evaluation criteria and conducted an initial screening of alignments through our level 1 screening process. We're currently working with our technical working groups to evaluate and compare alternatives using the level 2 screening criteria. Over the next couple of months, we'll complete the levels 2 and 3 alternative screening process, which will be documented in a Pell report that will be completed this fall, just like Ricky mentioned. Along the bottom of the slide, you can see some of the key meetings that we've held along the way. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you'll notice we're planning to hold our 3rd public meeting later this summer. That meeting is currently being planned for this coming August. As I mentioned, my focus today is providing the committee with a somewhat detailed overview of the level 1 evaluation criteria results. The purpose of the overview is to give you and the public insight into our process and an impression of how we are interacting with stakeholders, taking into consideration their input and how that is continuing to shape the course of the Pell study. Before you see the evaluation criteria in the upcoming slides, I wanted to remind you that the criteria are derived directly from the Pell study purpose statement, which you have all seen before. And here it is on the screen. And here you can see a map of the 9 alignments that the Pell study team has put forward for review and consideration. At our recent technical working group meetings, the Pell study team asked the technical working groups to consider these preliminary alignments in light of the level 1 evaluation criteria. Caltrans analysis and the technical working group feedback has led the Pell study team towards some proposed screening decisions, which I'll review in the following slides. The screen shows criteria 1, and both criteria 1 and criteria 2 consider the potential for each alignment to change connectivity and movement patterns in the corridor. In the bullets here, you can see that the alignments fall in sort of into groups based on whether an alignment maintains existing connectivity or requires new interchanges, which could create changes to movement patterns. Here's criteria 2. Here we observed that technical working groups generally agreed that existing and best available projections of travel patterns indicate that origin and destination patterns are pretty diffuse. In other words, there isn't any single destination on the west or 101 side of the corridor that attracts a majority. Everybody seems to sort of go all over the place when they're headed in that direction. The technical working groups also raised questions about the alignments that would go outside current 37 corridor. Namely, what would happen to the existing 37 corridor if a full retreat option or over water option was selected. We also heard feedback suggesting that even though alignment 8 would likely result in substantial changes to travel patterns, there's value in keeping it for further analysis because it's the only alignment that fully retreats far enough north to be outside the area directly impacted by sea level rise, and because the corridor is already owned by the state. And you can see alternative 8 in the far north there, the light blue alternative. Criteria 3 contemplates each alignment's ability to improve travel time reliability for HOV vehicles relative to baseline conditions. For this criterion, we heard agreement that alignments 7 and 9 would be the most direct routes between Novato and Vallejo and are best positioned to reduce corridor travel time. We also heard that 7 and 9 present an opportunity to offer expedited transit operations, and adding rail to that corridor could provide the straightest or fastest connection between Novato and Vallejo. And some stakeholders noted that the existing smart rail itself is threatened by sea level rise. And thus there's an opportunity for the project to co-locate road and rail within a single corridor. Criterion 4 asks if the alignments reduce exposure of the infrastructure to sea level rise, which, as you know, is one of the main factors behind this Pell study. Here, the alignments tend to fall in groups based on the relative position on the landscape. Criterion 5 addresses ecological resilience as a facilitator of sea level rise adaptation. In formulating the evaluation criteria from the project purpose and need, the prospective ecological resilience of the new alignment was highly valued. Technical working group members emphasized the need for alternatives design to take into account the potential sea level rise has to reshape the landscape of the North Bay for both human and natural communities. We also heard about the importance of the tidal wetlands and the importance of construction a roadway that minimizes interference with and promotes natural processes. And we heard some of that in the previous comments here this morning by other members of the public and our stakeholders. Criterion 6 addresses VMT. At the level 1 stage, we have not done any actual VMT modeling at this time, but by simply reviewing the different alignments, their locations, and with knowledge of current travel patterns, the Pell study team and technical working groups agreed that VMT would be likely to go up with the retreat alignments to the north of the current alignment and stay the same or hopefully decrease with the alignments that would stay in the existing corridor or use the over the bay route. Criterion 7 considers how well the alignments can accommodate other transportation modes. For this one, technical working group feedback regarding transit in particular is what prompted the Pell study team to propose, alignment 9, the direct Novato to Vallejo over water connection would provide most direct path and is potentially provides the best opportunity to operate transit. And as I mentioned, SMART's current alignment will be subject to sea level rise, and therefore an alignment that presents an opportunity to integrate rail transit would be ideal. The technical working groups also agreed with the importance of providing a connection to Vallejo, as you've heard elsewhere this morning. Criterion 8, pedestrian and bicycle facilities. As many of you know, Caltrans' policy is to include safe bicycle and pedestrian facilities as part of any new major investment. And we intend to do so along the 37 corridor as well. whether such facilities would be directly integrated, such as with a physically separated bike lane immediately adjacent to the road, or located parallel to, but some distance from the roadway, are important considerations and have generated a good deal of discussion. Technical working group feedback on this topic was consistent in noting that some of these alignments would be better positioned than others to serve users. For example, the cross bay alignments, although direct for motor vehicles, could be less appealing for pedestrians and cyclists, given the distance, well over 10 miles to cross the bay. And then there are other quality of experience considerations that have come to light and that are part of the discussion as well. Discussions also raised the idea of repurposing the existing State Route 37 facility for bicycle and pedestrian use should an off-corridor alignment be selected. This opens a variety of questions that we'll be exploring in more detail in our subsequent analysis, in our level 2 and level 3 analysis. For criterion 9, which considers transit and multimodal transportation solutions, technical working group feedback was generally similar to criterion 7 in regard to agreement on the importance of Vallejo and of having a relatively direct connection. We also heard feedback similar to that of criteria 1 and 2 that speculate that the transportation and land use patterns we know today may be different in the future due to sea level rise, changes in types of vehicles, and measures to curb greenhouse gas emissions, among others. And criterion 10 asks about maintaining and enhancing public access. One key takeaway on this criterion that we're looking into more closely is what happens to the existing Highway 37 in the event of an off-alignment option is selected. Could the existing corridor function for bike and pedestrian use until such a time as sea level rise impacts that corridor? Some technical working group members here emphasize that State Route 37 is currently the only way to access several recreational and other public or private properties. Therefore, if an off-corridor alignment is selected, there are concerns about achieving or maintaining access to such areas. Though some of those areas themselves, it's notable that they are projected to be subject to sea level rise as well. So that's another interesting aspect of our conversations. There, if you followed me through all of that, and I should say that I acknowledge there was a lot of detail on those slides, and I'm hopeful that all of you take some time outside of this meeting to review all those bullet points very carefully, because I very much quickly ran through all of that in the interest of time here. But at the end of all that, and this slide shows the summary of our level 1 screening results. And so you can see here that a couple recommendations on the second bullet are to eliminate a couple alternatives for further screening. And those were 2 and 3, and you can see those in the map to the right, represented as sort of dotted lines there. And then we also chose to consolidate alternatives 5 and 6 because they're very similar in nature. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of interest in, even though alignment 8 up in the far north there clearly has some flaws that we're going to be documenting, there's still a desire to carry it forward in the screening process because, as I mentioned, it is the only real alignment that is a truly full-blown retreat alignment that takes the entire corridor outside of the impacts of sea level rise. Finally, the level 1 screening also resulted in some decisions for transportation modes. And as you can see on this slide, a floating bridge, which was contemplated, presents some really significant challenges as an option for a transportation mode. Therefore, we're going to no longer consider a floating bridge as an option. We gave a lot of contemplation to ferries, and ferries could work, but they have limitations, in terms of being sort of considered in terms of a full-blown replacement to a roadway. However, there's a considerable value and viability in having ferries as a complementary mode of transportation as it relates to the overall transportation solutions for the corridor. And so we will carry that option forward in that manner. And so we'll be giving that more thought as well. And then not on this slide, but as I've mentioned in the previous slide here, the team is continuing to review and develop and study other modes such as bicycle and pedestrian options, as well as rail options. I can't relay enough how important those are to the future of the facility. And that's my presentation. Let's see here.
Great, thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. I see a couple of hands raised, and I'll go first to committee member Garcia.
Thank you. I'm pulling up my map here. Appreciate the depth of the analysis in this presentation. Thank you. Just wanting to add some additional information. Consideration impacts American Canyon. If you look at this, I'm looking at summary of level 1 screening on alignment. There's that section between Vallejo and American Canyon. And we see the destinations for State Route 37 as described in this one, 5 of them on the west side of the route. To be aware, a lot of the destination going north of on 29 on past 12, it's into the Napa Valley area. Recently, this is pre-COVID, I sat down with city manager. We looked at Caltrans information on number of cars going through American Canyon. It's about 50,000 going north on each commute day. And the amount for Vallejo at that time going east to west was about 49,000. So anything that eliminates the 37 route along the Bay Edge is going to put about 100,000 cars a day through American Canyon, would be our analysis of that. So those destination points need to be considered as well in the analysis. The route typically, I'm not sure exactly how it happens, but a 29 from Vallejo on any commute hour day is jammed from Vallejo all the way up through Napa Valley going north. So we know that some that commute activity goes up to Highway 12, and it's shown in your map on this one, in the previous ones, tends to take that route as an alternate route, getting over to the west side destinations. So that's an important one. I was also impressed with the opportunity for rail, because a rail line also exists going into Napa Valley. This is the Vine Trail, primarily used for visitor hospitality industry. That could carry a large volume of traffic as well. At one point, we had a city clerk in American Canyon, lived in Sacramento, and took the Capital Corridor Express to Sassoon every day, saved the little commuter car over there and drove back and forth. Completing that all the way to the west side, Novato side, would be a great resource for commuter traffic. I think would reduce a lot of congestion coming into the Bay Area on 37. I'm impressed also with the bicycle activity proposal. We just had a celebration with the Vine Trail in northern Napa County, connecting Calistoga to St. Helena. This process is going forward to complete that connection from Calistoga all the way down through to the Vallejo terminal. The visitor traffic would draw more, there's more of an economic advantage. We'd also see, locally as a way for commuter travel alternative to vehicles, probably more areas a little more congested like City of Napa. But the adventurous may want to take it even further. So I think the bicycle component is not a major component to traffic congestion, but certainly it provides an opportunity on a regional economic advantage and some reduction in impact on vehicles on the highway. So thank you for your presentation. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
Great comments. Thank you, Committee Member Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Daryl, please go ahead.
I just wanted to compliment Chris. It's a very complex study and he made it very understandable. So Chris, kudos to you for doing that. I was just gonna, maybe in the same theme of multimodalism, you referenced the ferry service and the CTAs when we were looking at Rail Smart the bus with MVTA, we actually looked at ferry service. This is pre-pandemic, so it probably needs to be updated. But I encourage you to look at that study as part of your PAL. And then also my understanding is WETA, which is obviously serving the Vallejo area, is getting ready to do an updated plan. We might want to talk to Seamus Murphy about just looking at this corridor to get a little update, since they're going to be putting some resources in there, kind of their future vision for WETA. So some opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have anything for Chris? Seeing no other hands raised. Real quickly, Drew, anyone from the public have any hands raised on this one? I see one.
Yep, we see one. Let me get that timer up. All right. Kate Powers, I see that you have your hand up. I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity again to speak. I just wanted to clarify my previous comments were based on the stakeholder working group meeting last week, where information was presented from additional technical working group from both the traffic and VMT standpoint, the design technical working group and the environmental technical working group. And the final information that was presented was that they were considering removing 1, 4, and 7 moving forward. That has not been finalized. So I do recognize that, Chris, and thank you for the presentation. But based on an additional overwater connection is being proposed in criteria 2. And I just wanted to point out that for the ultimate project, the current alignment, both 5 and 6 that are combined and the overwater connections that are being proposed between Marin and Vallejo, 5 and 6 is also going to be an overwater connection because of the level of sea level rise that is projected by the time the project is built. So again, just wanted to point that out and for your consideration, and reiterate that environmental groups are hoping that decommissioning of current segments of State Route 37 as needed to accommodate ecological resilience is going to be considered as part of the ultimate project going through. So all of the alignments that are considered going forward should be analyzed for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next I see is Barbara Saltzman. Barbara, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I've said this at the PEL meetings, that there really has been no environmental analysis of the overwater alternatives. And they would go right through current and potentially future, I don't know why they would change, rafting areas for ducks. I guess you'd have to stop the hunting that goes on there. I don't know if that would be positive or negative, but that has significant environmental impacts that have not really been looked at because the alternative came up late after the environmental discussions and real reviews took place. So thanks.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Next I have in line is a Cecil Bernstein. I apologize if I said your name incorrectly, but I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's Cecil Bernstein, but no worries. I'm just curious if alignment number 9 over water if a tunnel has been considered. So that's a kind of a question.
We'll get that for you after we finish up our public comment if we can.
And I believe that was it. So Chair Rabbit, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak during public comment.
Great, I'll bring it back to the committee. I see Mayor Garcia with your hand up. Is that from before? Or do you
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the another slide presentation there was talking about travel time. See, I know from an engineering capacity, engineers look at capacity for travel lanes. the commuter really is interested in travel time. So I think that's helpful. I want to know how long it's going to take me to get to point A to point B. Certainly, I've had that discussion a number of times in American Canyon with regard to alternate routes who could be developed. So I just want to put that on the table as well. It's important to know.
Great, thank you. And Chris, anything to offer on the idea of looking at a tunnel?
Yeah, we did look at a tunnel, and a tunnel at that location poses some pretty significant challenges or constraints. The two of them that sort of come to the top of my head, of course, one was cost. Cost is, some sort of cost is involved with all of these alignments. But the other driver for a tunnel is the bay muds and how to manage that at that location, given the shallowness of that part of the bay. Those were two main factors which made the tunnel option, very challenging to sort of overcome.
I will only add that we had a mega project workshop at MTC that talked about contingencies on tunneling projects being in the neighborhood of 250 to 300%. So you don't know what you're going to get into until you get into it. But all you know is that it's probably going to cost you a lot more than what you set out to spend, which seems to be a constant. So thank you for that. And thank you again, Chris, for the great presentation and the thoroughness of it. Appreciate that very much. We're going to move on, if it's okay with my colleagues, to 4.6, which is talking about the SMART highway or State Route 37 improvements, the white paper that was produced. Before I introduce Bill Gamlin, and I see Eddie Cummins. Bill Gamlin is the chief engineer of SMART. Eddie Cummins is the general manager of SMART. I will note that I am the current chair of SMART, and with us today we also have Eric Lucan, former chair of SMART, current director, as well as not with us but on our committee, Damon Connolly, Judy Arnold, and Susan Gorn, a former director as well. So we have a lot of interaction with SMART, and appreciate both projects going forward. And with that, Bill, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Chair Rabbit. Good morning, committee members. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present this morning. We put together a white paper that looks at a couple things with regard to the SMART-owned railroad and the State Route 37 alignment. It really has 2 points in it. The first is the importance of the railroad line from Novato to Napa. And secondly, we explore opportunities to integrate the railroad line into some of the State Route 37 improvements. And the focus of our paper is not passenger-centric or freight-centric. It really looks at just the railroad itself, opportunities for both. So this graphic is just to kind of orient everybody. We refer to the SMART-owned line from Novato to Napa as the Brazos branch. Over here on the left side of the screen, the dark green is the active SMART passenger line. The Brazos branch originates in Novato, heads east, across the Petaluma River, up through Shelville, and across the Napa River. Our ownership ends at that point, and from there, the track is owned by the Union Pacific, and this area in Lavender is operated by a small short line operator, the California Northern, based in American Canyon. So a couple things on the railroad alignment, the Brazos branch. This is a critical connection for Marin and Sonoma counties. It connects us to the national rail network. And that's important because from that line, you can really go anywhere in the country if there's railroad tracks there. The photo kind of illustrates that point in that this was when SMART's new trains were fabricated in Illinois and transported through the national rail network to Marin and Sonoma counties, where they were then commissioned. Freight is moved weekly on the line, and SMART is now the freight operator. We have taken over from the North Coast Railroad Authority typically a couple round trips a week with freight coming in and out of Petaluma primarily. It is a tremendous resource for the region, and we do have common carrier obligations through the Surface Transportation Board, which means we're obligated to provide freight service to customers that ask for it. As I mentioned, we interface with the California Northern. We get our freight handed off with them in American Canyon, and the ownership there is the Union Pacific Railroad. Types of freight that come in and out of Sonoma County, wine, grain, hops, the occasional lumber cars, and we have had conversations with a couple of the water agencies with the current drought conditions in looking at possibly transporting potable water. And finally, it provides a critical connection during emergencies, another avenue or connecting point for the region. In 2018, the state published the State Rail Plan, which was a vision for freight and passenger opportunities and better integration throughout the state. And one of the areas they identified was this passenger connection from Novato to the Solano hub, where we could connect to the Capital Corridor. In 2019, the state funded a study that we did. It was a feasibility study that looked at that alignment. We looked at originating at the Novato-Hamilton station, utilizing the existing track alignment up through Shelville, and then east to Sassoon-Fairfield. We inventoried what's out there today, looked at the natural environment from a very high level, and generally feasibilities of what a passenger connection could look like through this corridor. Getting into the State Route 37 project, we are primarily interested in the segment A alignment. It is where the Smart Rail alignment is closely connected to or adjacent to the State Route 37 alignment. It's also an area, as we've talked about this morning, with that is very susceptible to flooding. Our white paper explores the opportunity of doing an integrated facility that would really connect vehicular, the railroad, non-motorized opportunities for bicycles and pedestrians, but really presents some tremendous opportunities for environmental enhancement. If we were to lift the railroad on a causeway structure, similar to what is envisioned for the highway facility, we could remove the railroad embankment, which would allow free flow for wetland restorations and tidal movements. But it would also present an opportunity, if we were to combine a facility, to provide some nice on-site mitigation opportunities to restore wetlands along the alignment. I believe this is kind of a concept of what's looked at now for the segment A, State Route 37 alignment, some sort of causeway structure that would provide for vehicular and non-motorized transportation as well. In our white paper, we envisioned what that could look like with a railroad on a causeway as well. And then graphically, this is what that could look like. Again, a combined facility would free up space where the existing railroad embankment is today to restore the environment and provide mitigation opportunities as well. So finally, these are the recommendations we conclude with on our white paper. We're suggesting at a minimum, ensure that the State Route 37 improvements maintain and do not negatively impact freight rail service in order to meet federal common carrier obligations. Include the California State Rail Plan recommendations and objectives in advancing freight and passenger rail improvements in the State Route 37 corridor. Take advantage of the proximity of an existing rail line to develop and innovate multimodal facility that integrates vehicles, freight, passenger rail, bicycles, and pedestrians. And finally, leverage the opportunities of the combined State Route 37 and Smart Rail corridor to restore wetlands and preserve critical habitat. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you being with us today and appreciate you making that presentation. I'll pull it back to my colleagues, get the right view here. I see several hands up and try to go in order that they were raised. And I think I have Committee Member McConnell first.
Yes, thank you. The white paper makes reference to several legal authorities, both in the U.S. codes and also the California Rail Plan. I've never had an opportunity to review those authorities. I was wondering if it's possible for staff to obtain copies of those authorities and provide them to this group so that we can see what they're referencing when they talk about the requirement to provide certain services. I'd like to go to the original source if I could get my hands on it.
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Committee Member Lucan.
Thank you, Bill. You had mentioned leveraging some opportunities. Just a quick question with regards to leveraging in terms of financing. Certainly, incorporating rail increases the price tag on a project, but it also potentially opens up a new source and new pots of money from a federal level and in the infrastructure bills there that were unique to rail. Can you speak to that at all, or just what else is available there when you do incorporate rail to a project?
Yeah, great question. I am not an expert on funding, but I do know there are tremendous resources or opportunities out there right now through the FRA, through rail, to find funding sources to enhance rail and enhance connectivity as well.
Great, thank you.
Daryl, please go ahead.
Well, I'm going to continue my multimodal theme today. I had a couple comments and then I had a question. So first of all, Bill, thanks. My follow-up comment is, he referenced this as part of the California State Rail Plan, and CalSTA funded the feasibility study, if I recall, Eddie. And I think they also funded a study in our county, a follow-up, looking at the East End, what's called the Solana Rail Hub. So we're working on that project right now. Because the Capital Corridor goes through there. There's Link 21, which is a Bay Area initiative. There's also this study. So we're planning the rail station for the future. We're also, at the request of the Mayor McConnell, we're looking at the feasibility of rail in Vallejo, which has existing rail lines. So we're going to be starting that work this next fiscal year coming up. The question for Eddie or Bill or the multiple SMART members, where does this fit in as a priority for you? I know you need to expand north. You're trying to build out your system. How does this fit into your priorities? Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl.
I think to answer your question, Daryl, thanks for the question. I think we're watching to see what's going on here. Obviously, it seems like there's a lot of demand for rail through that area, so we are paying attention to that. Obviously, we want to continue to work on extending north, is what our obligations were when SMART was created, and so we're right there. We think that SMART has the potential to solve some problems through the area and be a solution for those areas. So it's at the top of our list.
Suzanne, please go ahead.
Thanks, and appreciate that presentation. Sorry, I'm freezing. How do you, Eddie and Bill, how are you thinking about the governance and funding issues? I mean, I know there's a lot of work to do to get to a point of having a project, but it does sort of require a single point of contact, who's going to lead that project and who's going to be the governance for that. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on how the SMART board might approach that?
Well, we have two members from the SMART board on here that may want to jump on that, but I will tell you from my perspective, Suzanne, obviously this has to come with an additional funding source. We're funded primarily by Measure Q. There would have to be an additional funding source because obviously we'd be running through different counties than just Marin. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done to figure out what this would look like, how it would be ran, who would run the service, would it be SMART ran, would it be run by a contractor? and obviously what that would look like moving forward. So I don't know that I have all the answers right now, but I think that there's a lot more work that would need to be done to make those decisions. And then maybe some from the Director Lucan or Chair Rabbit would want to speak more from the board perspective.
I'm not seeing Eric jump, but I'll go ahead and obviously I think there's and we talked, and Daryl, you've mentioned the multimodal thing continuously. I was just looking at the interim cost of what I believe to be segment A for the causeway of 1.5 billion that was mentioned before, and I was quickly trying to do the math about how much that is per mile, and understanding that you're talking at least with, I assume, a double set of tracks on a causeway. Is that adding 50% again to that project cost, or is it adding something much higher, given that it's has to be engineered for freight in the heavier weight? So I was just trying to understand that. I think at SMART, obviously, we have a voter initiative that dictated that we provide a rail line all the way to Cloverdale, and we're not there yet. We're what, 30% complete with construction at Windsor, but that's been held up and stopped since the RM3 dollars. We would like to get to Healdsburg. We would like to get to Cloverdale, but we don't know how, quite honestly, with the dollars available. And I think from the SMART Board's perspective, we're open to investigating going east, but it's always been at the, quite honestly, with monies as they become available from other sources. I do understand Suzanne's question. I think it's an important one. And I think that we've always mentioned rail on the Highway 37 Policy Committee as an option, but it hasn't been an integral option, because if it's a $5 billion project now, would it be a $7.5 or $10 billion project with rail? And would we have a project at all? And again, I look to our federal and state sources, federal probably in this case. If there's a check to be had, boy, we can get a project going as quickly as possible. But how do we do it otherwise? We have to cobble it together and take it piece by piece. So I do appreciate the looking at the aspirational big picture at the same time when you're talking about those kind of dollars. And I don't know what you do other than to kind of collaborate, work together, be realistic with one another, and somehow see what we can do to advance the cause overall. But I don't want to have any false expectations that rail is going to be going right down the center of the elevated roadway, as much as we would like that, because that will involve incredible amount of dollars. Eric, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that cost is an issue, but I think this is an opportunity to think big, to dream big, to be aspirational. We're not looking to address this corridor for the next 10 years. This is addressing the corridor for the next 100 years. So when we look at SMART, we've got 4 key focus areas at SMART: ridership, extensions, freight, and ridership, extensions, freight, and the multi-use path. And when I look at this checks all of those boxes. It could extend ridership. It helps with freight. It addresses the extensions. So it really does checks all the boxes. And that's why we're looking at it. We're looking at it very seriously. And I don't think we should, discount anything just yet. When you look at rail systems in their infancy, which SMART still is in its infancy, it's the initial system is never what it looks like 50 years later, and it's that the ability to continue to build on the system and to connect. And this Highway 37 visioning project is the exact thing that we should be doing in looking at all of the options and putting them out there for our community, and then trying to find the funds if a project materializes.
Great, thank you. Mayor Garcia.
Just to add to the comment on this matter too, it also reduces greenhouse gases. It reduces congestion, which reduces greenhouse gases. It's an environmental project as well for the betterment of the community and the future. And it's going to be a long time achieving all that. But it makes perfect sense to me, and I think a lot of other people as well, that we have to reduce vehicle traffic, meaning automobiles and commercial traffic as well as much as we can. And certainly the commuter part of it is the biggest part of congestion on the highway and greenhouse gases. And I think this is a beneficiary in all levels, in addition to the other things mentioned. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the committee before I turn to Drew and our public comment? Not seeing any other hands raised. I will turn to Drew and ask him to lead us through public comment.
Oh, most certainly. Let's get that timer up. All righty, I see 4 members of the public who wish to speak. We will start with Barbara Saltzman. Barbara, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Yes, I wanted to comment on the plan that SMART produced, and I think it was a good plan. And it appears to, at least as I interpret it, you're focusing on the projects in Marin. I'm not saying I agree with any particular design, but I would like to point out that the policy committee and other conversations about this 37 project have focused on putting SMART along the rail line. This really points out that there is a northern route that is in place and has received, as far as I can see, not much environmental review. It seems to me that could be upgraded fairly easily. Maybe it doesn't need any upgrading, I don't know, to provide a public commute use. And I think that deserves and warrants future, in some further attention and environmental review as we move forward with a project along this 37 corridor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Next I have in line is Rick Frades. Rick, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Okay, I read the white paper and I just have a few minor statements to make regarding greenhouse gases. The white paper pointed out, compared trucks, traffic on freight versus rail. I just want to say that probably within 20 years, trucks will probably be mostly battery operated, as most vehicles will. So I think our view of greenhouse gases and its impacts, we have to look at the future and what's coming to us, not the present. So I think that's a little bit of flawed. The comparisons made in the white paper between regarding freight, between truck traffic and rail traffic is not valid, I don't think, because we have to look at the future and what the future is going to bring. So I think you have to look at it in that context moving forward. So I think that's a little bit of a flaw to make that comparison at this point. And also have questions about rail lines in Sonoma, the Valley of Sonoma and Napa Valley and the wineries there. Are tracks laid out to service these wineries? I'm not sure of that. So that's another problem I have. That's the end of my comment, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Next in line, we have Kate Powers. Kate, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you. My question is to both of the SMART representatives. State Senator McGuire has recently raised concern that I share about allowing a current push to allow coal to be shipped from Utah, west from Sacramento and Vallejo through the North Bay along both the SMART rail train tracks and the North Coast Railway up to Eureka. And I was wondering how any of the planning that's being done right now is connected to that, and if you have any comments on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kate. Next in line, we have Ariana Rickard. Ariana, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thanks, and thanks for the opportunity to provide another comment. I just wanted to voice support for the last recommendation in the SMART paper, and that as part of the ultimate project, we recommend co-locating SMART's east-west tracks on the elevated causeway with SR37. And our preferred alternative for the ultimate project is an elevated causeway on the current alignment to improve hydrological and habitat connectivity and function, avoid sea level rise, and avoid impacts associated with the new alignment. And I just also want to voice support for what Councilmember Eric Lucan said about a more visionary, more ambitious, more aspirational vision for what's going to happen with SMART. And so what we support is moving SMART's rail infrastructure out of the Baylands, where it currently poses a serious and expensive impediment to restoration, and onto an elevated SR37 alignment. And that including this rail element in the ultimate project would attract additional federal and state funding sources for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana. Next we have in line is Steve Bertelbaugh. Steve, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Steve Bertelbaugh again with the Transportation and Land Use Coalition. I just want to clarify that electrification of the transportation network will apply to trains probably, as well as to trucks. The difference between trains and trucks in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is that the friction of rubber tires on roads, in addition to the damage that they do to roads, means that, and the difference in friction for tires to steel wheels on rail, means that there's a 3 to 5 times difference in the energy needed to move goods. So this is an issue that shouldn't bother us about shifting to trains. Big advantage in terms of reducing greenhouse gases. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Chair Rabbit, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak.
Great, thank you all very much. I appreciate that. I will say too, I think it was Kate Powers. I think that SMART itself as a board, and if not most local jurisdictions are on the record as being opposed to any kind of coal transfer project that was in the news some months back. And I know that we are in close contact to our congressional and state legislators on opposing that. The planning that we're looking at here is not at all connected to the coal transfer proposal. That connection already exists, to be honest, and it's just looking at making sure that the track can exist for those freight recipients that we have, particularly here in Petaluma. And right now, most of those recipients are really have to do with animal feed more so, and a little bit of hops to Lagunitas. So we appreciate that work. And I know that Eddie, working at SMART, is looking to expand freight operations and probably doing it in a, Eddie, I'm going to say the word wrong, but where you actually bring multiple shippers to fill individual boxcars, because quite honestly, we don't have massive, even wineries as well as they do in Sonoma and Napa County, probably don't have enough product to truly ship by rail, but may have some product to ship by rail if they can be combined with other goods as well. So do appreciate that. And I think we all recognize the environmental superiority of shipping by rail as opposed to those getting those trucks off congested roads to begin with. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there as well. With that, I'll look to my colleagues and or Eddie or Bill for any final closing comments. Do appreciate the opportunity to have this before us.
Not much more to add, Chair. Just say appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that again, and thank you for presenting the white paper to us. I will at this point go to our item 5 on the agenda, which is committee member comments or any kind of staff updates. Look to my colleagues if there's anything for the good of the order, and or our executive directors if there's something that they feel they would like to add.
I will just say, Chair, thank you, Chair Rabbit. I really appreciate that you've led this meeting for as many years as you have, and you do it so expertly. I just want to thank all of the presenters today. This is a huge project. When I was first elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2013, it was a rare opportunity that was presented where all 4 counties, both Sonoma, Napa, Marin, and Solano County, got together. I see heads shaking. It hasn't happened since, but each of us were asked, all 5 of us from each of the counties, so 20, what was our #1 issue and concern? And for me, it was State Route 37. It clearly was an issue for my city, the city of Vallejo, and certainly for anybody else that was westbound on 37 going to work, or eastbound in the evenings coming home. And so while that was a long time ago, we still have a lot of runway ahead of us. But I really appreciate that we are looking at interim opportunities to alleviate traffic. This corridor is going to detrimentally impact those who use it on a daily basis, particularly from Solano and Napa County, for decades to come. Even through construction, I just can't imagine what that's going to look like. But I really appreciate the efforts that are going forward, the partnerships with the counties, with Caltrans, with the environmental groups, and those looking for access as well as alternatives for transportation. This is a huge project. I'm happy to be a part of this. And I don't know how many of us here are going to be here when we're actually putting a shovel in the dirt, but we can certainly say we've started this process. We're going to continue this process until we get some relief for generations to come. So really appreciate that SR37 is in the forefront of our conversations, and we are looking for solutions that will alleviate expense as well as improve our environment. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the information that comes forward. It's perfect.
I really do appreciate you saying that, because I think we should always step back and remember why we all got together and the unique circumstances involved in that. And as you know, the 4 counties got together to solve a problem that was really a state highway issue, when the state said that they couldn't get to it for decades and decades to come. And this was before some certain revenue sources that since have become available. And and again, I salute our staff, who I know go above and beyond on this particular project and don't necessarily get funded for it. I salute Caltrans for really picking it up and really working towards the interim projects that are safety and congested and flood related. And I certainly salute MTC for being there too, and our state legislators for understanding that this particular issue is, at the end of the day, those who do live primarily in Solano County are tied up in far too much traffic. And this east-west connection is vitally important for the North Bay. This outside of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, which is a fine bridge and seismically upgraded to a degree. This is really the main connection that we have for certainly for commerce coming into Sonoma County and fully up the North Coast. So such an important project to go forward on. And I sometimes get a little too cynical in terms of whether it's aspirational or pragmatic. But as an architect, I can tell you I've designed too many projects that never got built. I don't want to design a project here that doesn't get built. And I don't want people to sit in traffic for any longer than they have to. And I look at the success of the 101 widening project that we've had over here in Marin and Sonoma, and remind people it took 20 years, and it's $1.3 billion. And here we have a 21-mile corridor that is going to take many more billions of dollars. And I hope that we can do it in less than 20 years, but I think we also have to be realistic about where that money is going to come from. Again, if someone wants to write us a check tomorrow, I think we can break that ground, the dirt, or Aaron, it may be breaking the mud much sooner than later, but look forward to that day coming. But do appreciate the fact that we're staying on top of it, driving this and making it an issue that needs to be solved. So thank you for that. Future topics are listed on the agenda. We're going to be talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law, funding opportunities, speaking of writing those checks, tolling legislation again in the expenditure plan, restoration projects, funding opportunities in San Pablo Bay, and the ultimate environmental phase discussion. And if there isn't any other comments of my colleagues, I think that leads us to adjournment. And just want to say again, mostly, well, to my colleagues as well, but certainly to staff for being with us today and putting all the great work in and continuing down this this highway together. So until next time, thank you, everyone.